in the search for these Grammy and the nominations prior to that, how did it start? How did it happen?
I would listen to them for hours because they would play until 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 in the morning. That's how I satisfied my hunger.
How was it like to give up all of it and spend more time with your passion?
I didn't see the light of day. I work 7 days a week.
And what it's been like the last 25 years?
I sat in the first row and then he started singing. And then for the next 4 hours or 3 hours that he sang, I must have cried through the entire concert of his because it was so beautiful, so magical. This is the guy I've been dying to meet.
Yeah.
So this is how I met Pandit Jasraj, and then I begged him to teach me. First Grammy nominated album came from my deepest meditation at 3 a.m. in the morning.
It's not every day that you meet a woman achiever in all aspects, from investment banking to philanthropy to music to discovering her passions along the way. I'm now today joined by Chandrika Tandon in a very interesting episode of Spot On. Thank you so much, Chandrika ji, for speaking to me.
Gaurie, I'm so excited to be here.
Likewise.
Thank you for having me.
And while I was, going through your bio, the one thing I realized, ma'am, was that what a fascinating journey it's been, right? You've covered ticking all the boxes, what it's been like from starting from investment banking to discovering your passion pretty late in your life. How has been the journey like?
Well, I think it's been, particularly in the last 25 years, it's been a very exciting, intentional journey. I can truly say that I wake up every day doing exactly what I want to be doing, which is something that most people cannot say of their lives. So I choose what I want to do, and I'm very happy doing it. So I think that's been the greatest change in my life for the first half versus the second half, because I think most of us, and me included, we sort of start out a certain way, and then we go in a particular direction. We keep, we go to school, we go to college, and then I happen to be in the business world and all of that. And then I decided to change my whole course, because then to bring in happiness is a key factor of how I wanted to live.
You're making me ask you that investment bankers are not a happy lot, right? Because you were again a very high achiever there as well, weren't you?
And different strokes for different folks. Some people are quite happy doing certain things. For me, I sang before I could speak. I was basically, I did so many little chores when I was a young girl. And I don't remember what chore I was doing, Gaurie, but I can tell you what song I was singing. I would keep singing. I hear the hum of an air conditioner. Even now, if I hear the air conditioner, in some part of my mind is unconsciously on a note there. It's the way I've been since I was born almost, I think. From the time I remember. I can remember so many songs from my childhood. So it's always been part of me. And when I have had hours of singing, I'm like a radiant being. I just feel so happy. I don't care what's happening in the world. So for me, bringing that part into my life was very important. I was doing that more incidentally when I was in the business world, because, I had a very high-powered existence. And the problem is, you start out very early in the morning, you start out with breakfast, you have meetings, you work, you've got dinners, and then by the time you're done, it's 10 o'clock at night. And so, for example, when I was working in Brazil, for example, we would finish our meetings, very late at night, at 10:30, like that. But then I would still crave music. And I learned Portuguese, and I would actually ask my clients if one of the great Brazilian singers was singing nearby, and they fortunately would start at 11 o'clock at night. So at 10:30, dead tired after a long day of work, I would actually go to by myself, which takes a lot of intrepid feelings, and I would go in São Paulo to a piano bar.
Satiate that hunger for music.
And just listen to Caetano Veloso or Sopa Contraria, one of these Brazilian groups that are fairly not well known. And I would listen to them for hours, because they would play until 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 in the morning. I couldn't stay until 5 or whatever they played, because I had to go back to work the next day. But that's how I satisfied my hunger. At some point, I wanted more. And I said, I've accomplished a lot, and I wanted to make my life more complete and incorporate it in a more intentional way. And that's really what my journey
You were
has been.
the youngest Indian-American partner in McKinsey.
Right.
You were working very hard to probably, become even bigger in terms of that field, investment banking in the world of finance. How was it like to give up all of it, most of it at least, when sort of changed course to take up and spend more time with your passion?
You know, in my 20s and in my 30s, the best way I'd characterize that whole phase is that I didn't see the light of day. I worked 7 days a week. I worked like, in fact, it was my 20s, 30s, and probably a little bit into my 40s. I worked so hard. I didn't get to where I got there because somebody handed me anything. I came to America with $24 in my pocket. I had a job. I worked very hard at my work. And McKinsey was not an easy place because I didn't have an American education. So my whole life was one of, and I was very focused on impact for my clients because I wasn't trying to get ahead at McKinsey. I was really trying to do the best job I could for my clients. And that meant you could spend 7 days a week trying to figure out an answer or doing the best job because there's no end. In McKinsey, it's not like you're given a little formula and say, do this. Each institution's different. Each management team is different. And you're an advisor at a very young age, and you're a very highly paid advisor. Not me personally, but the firm. So you have to really give it all your best, your entire self. And that's what happened. My entire self was focused on my work. So for me, the transition was, it wasn't that I left the business side completely, but the transition was that I decided to make this much more multidimensional. Until then, it was a unidimensional life. And it was a very intentional multidimensional life. So I decided I wasn't going to travel as much. And because it wasn't just McKinsey, I formed my own company.
Yes.
And I've got to tell you, when I formed my own company, one of the deals I did was in Australia, in Brisbane. And if you know the schedule, I had a young child. And if you know the schedule of getting from New York to Brisbane, they wanted me to live there. I couldn't move there because my family was still in New York. Every 10 days, I would fly to Brisbane for 32 hours. That's how long it took. I would have to fly to San Francisco. There was a time, and then you had to fly to Sydney, and then from Sydney to Brisbane. Every 10 days. And for the first time, I had video conferencing facilities in my home. So in the night, I would be setting up play dates for my daughter. And then come back here to New York for 10 days. So that's a kind of life.
Grilling schedule.
Grilling schedule.
But I guess, at some level, it's also because you are a parent. You want to give that time to your child as well.
And it's very important. That's a great point that you're making, Gaurie, because it's, as a woman, you really try to be everything. And you really try to be the best at your work. You want to be the best mother you can. You want to be the best wife you can. You want to be the best, friend you can. Whatever roles you have created, you've been sort of put in to, and you have many roles because I wasn't a single woman for the rest of my life. I had a family, a home, and we had lots of visitors. Because we live in New York City, so everybody who came, whether it's from India or around the world, would come and crash at our place. So I had an open hotel almost at my apartment in the city. I still do, but I think this is so my life was very, very big.
If you were to give a message to working mothers, who are trying to balance it out the way you did, never easy. There's never a template. No one knows what's the right way. What would that message be to young working mothers?
I'd have two messages. The first message is that you can't be everything to everyone all the time. You can be everything to people at some times, or you can be some things to everyone at other times. But you can't be everything to everyone at all times. And just give that up as a goal, because what happens is that goal becomes elusive and you're always chasing that goal. And the second, and I guess I have two or three things, which is something I think about a lot, having gone through this journey myself. The second thing I'd say is that we all, as human beings, and I think particularly as women, because we are very tormented about wanting to be the best we can, because we have a great well of compassion in us for everyone else. So we're always trying to get somewhere. And I don't know whether this happens with you, but for me, the big narrative that would go through my head is, I'm not good enough. I haven't done enough. I'm a perfectionist. I need to do more. I would be spending all Saturdays at the office trying to do that much more. The last 20%. I could have stopped at 80, but I want to do that much more. And so we're always trying to get somewhere, trying to not be good enough. You want to get better. And I think I used to wear this I'm a perfectionist, this badge of being a perfectionist with great pride. My whole thinking changed where I said, I am not a perfectionist anymore. I am perfection the way I am showing up for anything. I'm my best self. I'm here. So my mental framework completely changed. And that's freed me up from any angst you feel inside about, you know, what did you think of me? How did I sing? Did I do well? You're not evaluating yourself and thinking of other people evaluating you, and you've got all this drama and dynamics
This
going on.
external validation that really...
That too. But it's your own internal. You're your worst critic very often.
Yeah.
And so all of that noise, it doesn't go away overnight. But my journey has been that noise is now non-existent. Even as I sit here today, I'm just happy to be here.
Indeed.
It doesn't matter what, you're not
Anybody
doing
else
it
is
for
thinking.
anyone else. You're doing it because you want to share something and you're doing the best you can. And I think that's a very important perspective for every human being to have, particularly women, because we are called upon to do so many things.
Indeed.
And especially in the Indian society, and being an Indian woman, you are expected to serve, whether it's your in-laws, whether it's your family. There's a certain expectation of how the Nari should be. And I think we are always living up to it. And we can't very often.
Yeah, that elusive gold standard.
And the gold standard. And
Yeah.
then, so what? Are you going to spend your whole life falling short of it in some way? And every time I do speeches with young women, the single question I get asked is about balance. Yeah. Everyone is worrying about balance. What do I do? Do I give up my career? Do I work? It's okay. And whatever choices, Maslow's hierarchy, as long as you can kind of put food on your table, take a trajectory view. It's one of the most important pieces of advice one of my senior partners gave me. He said, don't get so obsessed about what's going to happen in the next year or 2 years. Take a long-term view.
Yeah. Take a long-term view. Indeed, that should be the big message.
And it's an important message because if you can really focus on, there's so many things that I've learned in my journey, but if you can just focus on just living a complete, happy, multi-dimensional life, because all of us have so many dimensions to ourselves.
I think that's the most important part, right?
Right.
And you don't want to be unidimensional in your
And
approach
as
to
business
life.
people, as a businesswoman, I was very unidimensional because that's all. You're going from a client meeting to another client meeting, and that's all I cared about. Yeah. In the night, I'd take my work home and my mind. Yeah, it was my family and all that, but it was all about work.
Was it a tough decision to make? The world of finance is also high adrenaline, right? At some level, was it a tough decision to make to cut back on that and spend more time with your passion, with your music?
It wasn't a decision. It was an imperative. I didn't have a choice because what happened to me is, in fact, it was almost, I want to say, the universe looks out for you, the divine looks out for you, is the best way I can characterize it. My journey to the transition really started in a very bizarre way because I was coming back on a flight from Europe. I was the only passenger in first class in that flight. And I was about to sign a deal. I just spent the whole amount of time with the management team, with the board. They were about to sign us for a very, very big deal in Europe. That would have meant my spending the next 10 months or so in Europe, back and forth, like I did in Australia. My company was doing this, not in McKinsey. On the flight back, I was reading Autobiography of a Yogi. And within the first half an hour of that flight, I was the only passenger, and I started crying. And I don't cry, if I'm a tough person, I'm a tough cookie. So I cried. I read this book and I cried, and I cried the whole 7-hour flight through the entire. And the board is waiting for me. This is before the days of cell phones. This was in 1999. They were waiting for me to get back to them because I just said to them, give me a weekend to go figure this out. Let me just sort this out. Then we were going to sign this and do a press release on Monday or Tuesday. That was the plan. Came back to New York. I couldn't do any work. I was so tormented. I call it my crisis of spirit. And so this was not a choice for me. And at that moment in time, it was almost like, what would happen if, I'm going to make a lot of money. My whole reputation is going up one more level. I knew I could do the work. This is something I was well known for. But at that moment in time, it wasn't enough. It wasn't how I said, what happens if I die tomorrow? What are they going to say? She did 50 deals and she made so much money for so many people, the market cap. Who cares? That was not relevant to me. My life wasn't better because of that. And I said, what happens if there is no reincarnation? I never come back. Is this how I should have spent this? It was such important questions. I'm so happy I got to ask
Existential
them.
questions, actually.
Existential. And I didn't know about existential anything. I didn't have a guru. It wasn't like I was consumed. I didn't even have time. I told you, I didn't see daylight. I didn't have time to think about these things. But suddenly it just exploded in me. So I read about the next few weeks, months, I read about 2,000 books, but the universe just sent me people.
Did you sign that deal, by the way?
I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
Which completely, which cost me a lot.
Yeah.
Because the board was very unhappy with me. And I had to fly back to appease them. But, nobody's going to understand. I mean, we're in the top part of the business world. Nobody gives a damn about a crisis of spirit. It's like, okay, who are you and what are you talking about? And, we need you for our company. It was a big deal. So it cost me a lot business-wise. But at that moment in time, I was unstoppable.
And 26 years later, that doesn't matter, right?
It's not only... It's not that it doesn't matter. It was actually, I think of how barren my life would have been if that hadn't happened. Because so many dimensions have opened up. Because my simple decision at that point was that I was going to add some music in my life, because I just said, when am I so happy? And I said, I love singing. I'm just happy when I sing. That was it. I'm just so happy when I sing. I could sing for hours, just creating, composing, not for anyone.
Is it easy to give up livelihood for a passion?
It's not about...
I'm not asking for you. I'm saying
for
a lot
anyone.
of people may have the same dilemma.
I
Let's
know,
say you're an artist.
but I think it's not about what you give up. As I tell everybody, don't give up anything. As long as you know where you're going towards. Once you're clear about what you're going towards, then there's no giving up, because you're so excited about where you're going towards. So for me, I wasn't giving up anything. I was going towards adding music in my life, and I was going to keep... my business brain didn't go away. My experience, I was a very senior person in the business world.
Absolutely.
It wasn't going to go away.
It's just reprioritized.
I rebalanced it.
Rebalanced. Yeah.
You're exactly right. I rebalanced it. So every day had music. I built in my family. I spent much more time with my daughter. And I said I wasn't going to do international travel. I wasn't going to do this crazy, go to Europe every week, flying back every week, which is what I would have done.
To Australia for 32 hours.
Every 10 days to Australia. I did Brazil. Brazil, my schedule was even worse. I would fly every Sunday night. At 11 o'clock, there was a flight from New York to Brazil, to Sao Paulo. And Wednesday night, I would take a midnight flight from Sao Paulo and fly back to New York. And then Friday, I'd go to my client in Boston. That's how crazy my life was. I was traveling all the time. And I said, I'm not going to do that.
You really weren't seeing daylight, were you?
I wasn't seeing daylight. And I saw so many time zones that it was just, and by the way, I didn't think about my health. I didn't think about anything. And then I'd come home on the weekends from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'd try to be a good mother.
Yeah.
But
there's only
it's
so
not,
much. There's only
so much of you.
One woman can
and
do.
you try, and then you fail at everything you feel. And then that's exactly what the dynamic is. And I think, of course, mine's an extreme example. I was not everybody has that same
Grueling
detail.
schedule. But you were also a high achiever. That's the fact.
And
were a
we
high
all are
achiever
dealt certain, but a lot of people are high achievers without the travel and all of that. But irrespective, I know, because I've worked with probably so many, 70, 80 CEOs in my time. And they're very good friends of mine, because I'm an advisor to many across big companies around the world. And many of them, as we have now shared stories and worked together for many, many years, and I've helped them change their lives, I think unidimensionality is a very key characteristic of many of the business executives in our... It's changing a lot now, but I would say, particularly earlier on, none of us, we didn't, this was our way to quote unquote success. And then we forget what is success.
Was it uncool to probably look at other dimensions?
No, nobody can. I'm going to tell you.
The other business executives.
I
and the
know. So I'm
CEOs?
going to tell you a story. I started in 1999 or 2000. When I started to look at this whole journey of mine to be a fuller person, you know, I started to sign every email. I came up with this phrase, love, light, laughter. Every email, every text, anything I send, I sign love, light, laughter, Chandrika. This is. So I decided, first I had a thought, I said, do I send it even to the business people like that? Because nobody, especially in 2000, no one was talking about love or light or laughter.
Yeah.
Insane, especially in the business I was in. I was in the mega restructurings, right? You know, there was the tough lawyers, the tough bankers. It was a whole different
Tough
ballgame.
negotiations.
Everything was, you know, we were taking troubled companies. People were out there. Creditors were fighting for their money. It was a very, very tough time. No one had
Asset
a moment to
reconstruction,
spend.
essentially.
All of
Yeah.
that, you know, and operational restructuring. So a lawyer, a top lawyer, one of the biggest takeover guys, I signed Love, Light, Laughter. And I said, no, I'm going to do this because it reminds me of how I want to be every single time. This is how I want my life to be. That's not where I was, by the way. Let's be clear. I was far away from that. But
was your
every
aspiration.
time, that was my aspiration of success was not money. My aspiration wasn't to get anywhere. My aspiration was that I stayed, I mean, it makes me want to cry to think about it, but that I always stayed in love, in light, and in laughter, that I kept this element of joy, and that's what I felt. And my thought was that if I felt that way, I can radiate it. And here I am, this absolute type A, tough businesswoman. But it did two things, right? One is, if I was writing a tough email to someone, whether it's business or work or personal, I'm just going to say, God, how could you mess up this thing, you know? I would write love, light, laughter, and I said, goodness, what a rude email to send. And I would completely rewrite the email. I would rewrite it and say, you know, you probably were having a tough day, but you know, this thing didn't go so well, perhaps we can change it. It just made me change the way, sometimes I couldn't completely do it.
Yeah.
But then this top takeover lawyer wrote to me and he said, Chandrika, what is wrong with you? What is this love, light, laughter, SHIT? I just said, you know, what can I say? I'm going into the new age, you know. So I just laughed it off. And I kept signing that way. About 6-8 months later, this guy's like, you know, he writes one-line emails, like he writes 6 words, get it done. You know, that would be. He suddenly writes me a mail saying, warmth and hugs. And I just said, you must be kidding me. I picked up the phone, I called him up and said, he's an older guy, much older guy. So I called him up and said, you must be kidding me. Did you just say warmth and hugs? I said, the toughest takeover lawyer in the world is basically saying warmth and hugs. He says, yeah, you keep writing love, light, laughter. I felt I needed to get back. You know, he says it makes me want to think of different things. I said,
So that positivity was infectious at some
and
level.
I think so many people, and in fact, some guys that I wouldn't imagine, some write back to me and say love, light, laughter. And they said, I've made it my affirmation now. I say, great, go. Or they'll say love and light, or they'll pick a couple of phrases, or they do their own version. The other thing it started to do is, again, I'm talking of unidimensionality. This is something I want us to really think about as people, right? We are so oriented towards one dimension. And I think all of us, even when I work with, as a consultant, I used to work with several CEOs. McKinsey's getting paid a lot of money. My company was getting paid a lot of money to spend time. So you're sitting there and saying, oh God, I better not spend 1 minute on even asking how their kids are or who they are. Let me just focus. I mean, 1 hour, let me earn my money, you know.
Yeah.
People are human beings.
Yeah.
Yes. And somebody doesn't do a good job one day, we're thinking, how dare he mess up? But people are human beings. We are never at our best all the time.
Yes.
And so I think being multidimensional helps you understand with greater compassion, both for yourself. When you have a day when you're not producing, it's okay.
Yeah.
If you're not a great, you know, you just don't want to really deal with your child or deal with your husband, it's okay. It's not a crime. And it's not okay if you messed up something. It's okay. And I think it's okay if somebody else does that. So it makes you look at the whole world with love and compassion. That's to me the love, light, laughter. So it
It made you
changes
accepting of a lot of
and much more
human
compassionate.
flaws. Yeah.
And then you begin to just see. So to me, that was the journey of. So it was never giving up. And if anything, I would say the music helped me find myself, and that was my biggest journey. That's been my biggest journey in the
And
last
what it's been
25 years.
like the last 25 years, you've been nominated several times for the Grammys, but what it's been like the last 25 years, because, music is also a fairly competitive field. It's, of course, the search to find your identity is there. You want to do that. You want to probably isolate yourself from the noise. But at the end of the day, the arts as a field is also a very competitive space, isn't it?
It matters. It really depends on what your objectives are. Remember, I didn't go into music to become an artist. I never imagined I'd make an album. That wasn't why I went into music. I went to music to sing. You know what I would do when I started singing? I became a music beggar. I truly would. I heard for the very first time, I heard Pandit Jasraj sing. And I heard him, I was sitting in the first row because I was a patron of this arts organization. I didn't know who he was. I never heard Hindustani music. I'd been in Brazilian, Carnatic, all of that, but never much with Hindustani. I sat in the first row, and then he started singing. And then for the next 4 hours or 3 hours that he sang, I must have cried through the entire concert of his because it was so beautiful, so magical. And in my mind, I said to myself, I want to learn from him. And, like this, but of course, most of these people take students when you're
They're
5
young
and
and
they live with them and they travel with them and do all of this. But the universe has a way of working. And I've got to tell you a very wonderful story about Pandit Jasraj, who I wanted to learn from, but I didn't know him. And I went to a concert of his after that again. Somebody calls me up. This is a week or two after I'd had this incredible experience, and I'm telling God or the divine, I want to learn music this way. I want to experience music where this combination of bhakti and notes come together. This is what's going through my head. I'm praying. I don't know quite how I'm doing it. A friend of mine randomly calls me up and he says, 2 weeks later, and he says, and this is so bizarre, the coincidence, that I can't call it a coincidence. I call it universal synchronicity. He says, oh, I'm a single guy and I'm going to have Pandit Jasraj to my house for dinner tomorrow. But they have just called me up and given me a list of dietary requirements for him, which I cannot meet because I'm a single guy. I was going to order Chinese food, but he doesn't eat onions, he doesn't eat garlic, he doesn't eat anything. I don't know what to do. Do you think we can move the dinner to your house? And, because you've got cooks and stuff, so maybe you can do it. I said, of course, this is the guy I've been dying to meet. Yeah. So this is how I met Pandit Jasraj, and then I begged him to teach me. And I met all these teachers. So for me, this journey of finding music was never about performing. And when Pandit Jasraj gave me his senior most disciple to teach me, Pandit Girish Vazalwar, who passed away, I would sing for 10 hours a day with him. I didn't care what was happening around me. In breaks, I would do it on weekends and stuff.
Yeah.
And I didn't care what was happening around me. I wasn't trying to perform. I just loved being in the notes, learning the bhajans, learning the mantras. That's all I wanted to learn. But what music does for me, it did for me, is you can't find the purity of the note, the sa, until your mind is quiet, which I didn't understand. And for the level of musicianship that I was aiming for, and I was at, by the time I was working with these great masters, Pandit Jasraj, Veena Tai, Veena Sahasrabuddhe, Shubhra Guha, Vijay Kichlu. So I've worked with the greatest masters. And I still
continue. And how long was the time that you spent with them, and what was that?
It was very difficult because I remember I was still running a company. I still had a family in New York, and I couldn't travel all over the world. So I would find when my daughter was at camp, and then I would rearrange my schedule to go to India for 10 days, and I would sing for 12 hours a day. Mess up my voice, but then bring back 100 tapes. And so that's how Veena Tai would come to New York for a concert, and I would beg her to stay with me
over with you, and
for several days, and then she would teach me. And then she's practicing. I would just be a fly on the wall, and I would go.
What was your one key learning? I mean, besides, of course, musical learning, when you were with all these stalwarts, that one learning that transcends
No, but
everything else.
I think for me, as I was going to say, is that the music helped me quiet my mind, because you can't really sing until you get out of the way. There's this beautiful Kabir doha, "Jab main tha, tab hari nahi. Ab hari hai, main nahi." And I think so. That basically says that. And this Vinatai taught me this doha as part of Kabir's beautiful Dhun Sunu Ke Manwa. It's about meditation and what it does. So music led me to meditation. And meditation led me to service. Because once you go deep, deep, deep into meditation, I've done 10-day retreats, Vipassana, I've done all the gurus. I've done so much meditation. I still do several hours a day. I don't even leave my room till I've meditated. And I don't end my day without meditation. Long meditations.
So music actually started this journey
Music
towards.
helped me find myself.
Yeah, it
because
centered you.
music showed me that I had to quiet my mind to discover myself. My best compositions, my first Grammy nominated album came from my deepest meditation at 3 a.m. in the morning. I didn't set out to compose anything. When I went for my 10-day Vipassanas, when I composed Shivoham, all the pieces of Shivoham, I could hear it all. Not fully, but I heard snippets of what I should do. And then I went out and when Soul Call happened at
It's
3 a.m. in the
interesting you
morning.
mentioned that you could see, because there was an interview of late Ashwini Pireji that I had once heard, and the one thing she told me was that I'm not able to sing till I'm able to see the rag. जब तक राग दिखते नहीं, तब तक मैं गा नहीं पाती. That's what
Right.
she told.
Yeah, because-
But
and-
not to me. I heard
But
that.
I think
interview.
both Ashwini Bide and as well as Ajay Chakrabarti both all speak about seeing the notes, and
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
more
yeah.
advanced way of studying the rag. But for me,
They've
it was,
internalized it. Yeah.
for me, it wasn't even seeing the rag. It was mostly getting out of the way, and you can't get out of the way until you go into a deep silence. And when you're in the deep silence, you can access so much. My best writing, my best thinking. That's why, I haven't really given up anything on the business side, but I'm just much more efficient. I'm much more,
Multidimensional.
yeah, and I'm much more and I'm much more, I can get a lot more done with a lot less time.
And while of course you were not, in the search for these Grammy and the nominations prior to that, how did it start? How did it happen? When your
The
albums got
first
nominated?
the first album I made was not supposed to be an album. My father-in-law was turning 90. It was a true gift. I love him so much. And I wanted to give him a gift. And he is not terribly musical, but they worship Durga and Shiva. So I said, let me take Om Namah Shivaya. And then I said, I'd been learning all this music. And I just said, I started to just sing Om Namah Shivaya in different ragas. So I just said, let me record it, so give it to him. That's all it was. And then when I
You have
recorded
to sing for
it,
us, Chandrika. You have to sing for us.
no. So that's how that started. So, I started because in one of the bhajans, it's like I heard one Om Namah Shivaya, and then I said, okay, let me try it in a different raga, and in a different raga, and a different raga. That's how the first foray into a recording an album, a recorded music, even started for me. It wasn't for a Grammy. But then the next album I made was at 3 a.m. in the morning when I woke up.
Shivoham.
No, that one was Soul Call. Om
Okay.
Namo Narayana. And by the way, the weirdest thing about that one, that was the one, Grammy nominated one. Om Namo Narayana is not a mantra that I sing. I didn't know that mantra. I didn't know what it meant, what the bigger idea of that mantra was. But I suddenly kept hearing this Om Namo Narayana in my dreams. Literally at 3 a.m. in the morning, I was hearing multiple mukras of that, just that 8 syllables. 3 a.m. in the morning. And I didn't know what it was. So I went to my keyboard, kind of recorded them on my little recording. I always carried this Walkman, this recording thing with me. And at 4:30 or 5, after I'd gone through this burst of craziness, I'm still sleepy. I called up Dada, Girish Dada in India, and I said, Dada, I have no idea what these ragas are. Because I hadn't learned, like 4 of the ragas that I was singing, I hadn't heard. I said, can you tell me, what am I singing? And I played him, and I sang some of these lines that were coming to me. And he said to me, And he's not a guy who pays any compliments. He doesn't, this is very...
He's a music scholar.
He's a music scholar. Doesn't want to get your head swell up. I didn't even know I could sing well until many years later. I know he appreciated me. He said, "Ye ajeeb se bahut acha lag raha hai." He was very, he was so shocked at the way these compositions were coming out. He said, "Main aapko Shuddh Sarang sikhaya bhi nahi. Kaisa? How did you do this?" I said, "I have no idea. I didn't know what raga this was. This was a tune that I was hearing." So Soul Call was not composed by me. I completed it. But I was given Soul Call. And I've probably had several thousand emails from people whose lives, not appreciating it, who have spoken about healing experiences because of Soul Call. A woman sent me, it's going to sound bizarre, I have a picture, it's probably on my phone somewhere, of a woman whose mother died with a Soul Call album on her body.
Oh.
On a 90-year-old mother who died. And many of them were not Indians. So I think...
Has your music found a resonance in America?
Of course.
In the Indian American community or outside as well?
Look at the Grammy for Triveni.
Of course.
Triveni was, to me, it's beautiful music, of course. But look at what it was. It was mantras, our ancient Vedic mantras that we put in a jewel-like setting with a South African flautist and a Japanese cellist, and we kind of, all it is mantras. Purnamadha, Purnamidham, which is I am fullness, I am abundance. Triambakam Yajamahe, which is about immortality.
Yes.
Om Namo Narayanaya, which is a cell and like a kavacham, it's an armor as our bodies are going through their rejuvenation processes. All Asatoma Satkamaya. Lead me to the light, lead me to reality. Every one of these mantras that I've used were ancient Sanskrit mantras. And we have the world, the Grammys, listening to these Sanskrit mantras, asking what the meaning is. And by the way, I'm going to tell you something which is going to sound which shocked me when I saw it. About 5 years ago, we did an analysis to see who are our biggest fan followers, because I have several thousand people on my social media. Number 1 and 2 were a couple of the Indian cities. What were 3 and 4? Take a guess. Islamabad and Lahore.
Oh.
So this is not music crosses boundaries.
Indeed. But these are ancient Vedic mantras.
And they have resonance. So it's not about, and that's what we need to understand. So I think the message I have here sitting in India, and I feel so proud that I had the biological lottery to been born here and been part of this tradition, is that we have this wealth of mantras. We have this wealth of history, and our sages knew so much. And we've kind of lost our way along the way, because many of what the sages knew, the priests repeated, and we repeat them mindlessly without understanding it, but we're sitting on a treasure trove.
But I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that
Lahore, Islamabad, I think there's a third city in the top 10. This was our and they probably are still very strong.
What is the next music project that you?
I have so many happening now. I have one which I've almost finished. Just as I've done Om Namo Narayana, this time I took the Maha Mantra. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So I've done that in 8 ragas with a kirtan. It's spectacular. I love the ragas that came to me, from everything from Kamaj to Jokons. I try to do ragas that I haven't done before, so it's completely different.
The freshness.
I love the music. And my test is, do I love singing it? And do I love singing it again and again?
What was it like winning the Grammy? And of course, it was a validation of the work, the project, the kind of music that you are creating and its universal appeal. But what was it like?
Well, it was wonderful. And I think what it has done is it's brought greater attention to the kind of music that we are doing. And in fact, it was beautiful during the Grammys. I had several sessions when we had hundreds of international singers mostly American, but all of them chanting with me, because we did these showcases. And that was so beautiful, because people, without boundaries, without people weren't worried about which part of the world they were from or where this mantras were from. They were just into the music, into the mantras. So that felt really good. I think that's what, to me, the Grammy meant. And understanding and embracing the community. The other thing for India, which has happened with the Grammys, which I never expected, we've had an outpouring of emails from young people talking about what chanting, they said, we didn't know what these chants meant. And the fact that, in a sense, I love the fact that chanting is suddenly more cool with the younger people. And I love the fact that the Grammy was one more step in that journey happening. So those are the two things.
There's a segment in the podcast where I ask rapid fire questions.
Okay.
And quick questions, quick answers, which is first up, which is Bollywood or Hollywood?
I'd have to say Hollywood, because I've lived in America for 47 years.
Okay. Classical music or contemporary fusion?
Both.
Oh,
Can't pick one.
The whole segment is about choosing.
It's about choosing. I would have to say classical then.
The purity of it.
The purity, because then you can then go into contemporary, but with contemporary alone, you can't go easily into classical. This allows you to transcend.
India or the world stage?
Still India.
Even after 47 years.
My
India,
heart,
yes.
my heart, dil hai Hindustani.
Of course. Philanthropy or performance?
Philanthropy. And I don't think, please don't use the term philanthropy. It's a privilege to serve. I serve. I'm a servant learner.
Solo projects or team collaborations?
Collaborations.
What has been your most treasured collaboration so far?
Everything has been a collaboration. I've never done anything alone.
City life or peaceful countryside?
City life.
For someone who's meditating every day,
Yes.
city life, okay?
100%, because with meditation, I can be anywhere. I'm always in my space. I can be in the most crowded space and have the best time. But I love the vibrancy. I live in New York City.
Yeah.
The city that never
Wow,
sleeps.
yes, the city that never
So
sleeps.
I am there and I love it, and I will never leave that place.
Emotional lyrics or instrumental compositions?
Emotional lyrics. By a long shot, I would say emotional lyrics that think about love, light, laughter, and go touch a higher power.
Studio recordings or live performance?
I would say studio recordings, because I can touch a lot more people than a live performance. But that works too. I love live performances.
Lastly, leadership through action or words?
Naturally, action.
Of course.
Naturally.
Of course. This has been such a fascinating conversation, Chandrika ji, but we cannot end this without a short...
Can we skip the singing? Because I'm literally, I don't even think my voice is working right now.
That's okay. No problem.
Because I've been coming off a bad cold. What would you like to hear?
Anything, ma'am. Anything that you would like to sing. Anything.
So let me sing you from the very first album, Om Namah Shivaya, which is called Soul Mantra. And I'll just do a couple of lines from Soul Mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, and a couple of lines from Om Namo Narayanaya,
Yes.
Soul Call. So this is how I took the different mantras, okay? So in Om Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. That was Om Namah Shivaya and Rag Kedar. I have a whole piece. I don't have a tanpur on, but whatever key that is. And I took a different raga and Om Namo Narayana, which we did in both Triveni, and I also did in Soul Call. Namo, Namo Narayana, Namo Narayana, Namo Narayana, Namo Narayana, Narayana. Namo Narayana, Namo Narayana, Namo Narayana, Namo Narayana, Namo Narayana, Namo Narayana, Narayana, Namo Narayana.
Thank you so
And
much.
so it goes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I wish I could just go on clapping, but I'm sure the
I
audience
could
will be
sing
watching
forever.
this.
I could sing forever. You know, I love to compose on the spot. It's just what I do. I love thinking of words and melodies. It's just, and it's not for anyone, it's for me.
And it's coming out in your music. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for this conversation. Thank you so much for speaking.
Thank
to
you,
me,
Gaurie.
SpotOn.
Appreciate the time. And thank you to the whole crew. You guys are fabulous.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.